How's it going, guys? I'm Robert from Machado Visuals, and welcome to Gearside Chat number 7. Tonight, I am super excited for this stream because today's guest is a San Francisco / Bay Area gaffer, and you probably know him from his YouTube channel, Meet the Gaffer, where there is a absolute treasure trove of information and golden nuggets. I love even now going back into the archives and just digging through and just I'm always able to extract a new piece of information. So I'm super happy to welcome Luke Seerveld. How you doing, man?
Doing well. Glad to be here.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for. I'm glad we were able to do this. We had to reschedule about 3 or 4 times, but because both of our schedules ended up being so busy. But I guess that's a good thing.
We actually work.
There you go. There you go. It actually so happens that literally less than an hour ago, I was working on set, so I had to race home and scarf down a meal and get all this set up, and just so I was able to make this stream. So again, I'm super happy that we're able to make this work. And for anyone in the chat that has a relevant question for whatever we're talking about, so long as it pertains to the current topic, feel free to ask away. And so basically, for those that might be unfamiliar with what a gaffer is, how would you explain your job title?
I guess, if lighting is involved to illuminate your set, then if you have the money and the crew size, then you ask someone like me to come along and add some expertise, and then I'll work with the camera person to realize their dream. And they're, of course, working underneath the director who's working under the producer. So it's very hierarchical. And if you have enough people, then I may be in that chain.
Yeah, that's, it's, and we'll get about a little bit more into your approach and a little bit more of that later on the stream. But I'm curious because as a DP, I know I get a bulk majority of my work through word of mouth. Is that kind of similar for you? How are you getting most of your work?
Yeah, big time. I do belong to Local 16, the IATSE here in San Francisco, but it's not as broken down as it is in LA, where you have a different union for each area. Here, we're all kind of in 16, so grip and electric, and there's other departments that are all underneath that umbrella. But most of my work is not union work. It's not union affiliated. It's independent, smaller crew sizes, 10 to 20, not larger feature or even commercial where you can have 40 to a couple hundred people. So I tend to be on small to medium size shoots that are corporate or commercial. And
Yeah, and you mentioned, I think, in one of your recent videos that I think corporate is kind of a good space to be in. Is that, I'd love to hear a little bit more on that in terms of, your thought process behind that.
Well, I mean, it's not the most exciting in terms of telling friends and family. It took, I don't know if my mom ever really figured out what I do. It's like, you mean someone calls you, you don't have a contract, you show up, and then someone hopefully pays you in a month or two. It's like, and what do? You come together with people you haven't necessarily worked with before. Sometimes you work with some people that and then you do something that I don't know. It's an odd job that we have, really. But yeah, in terms of corporate, I think and in the Bay Area, since we have so many Silicon Valley technological companies, big pharma, companies that still need to put out information despite COVID times. And yeah, my recent thinking on that is because the larger productions, the feature folks, were so strict about needing to be very strict about how they dealt with protocols, that sort of filtered down and allowed us, who are still doing production, but just not on that scale, allowed us to sort of, be allowed to keep working despite COVID times. And so, yeah, my feeling, also not being a producer who may do travel work and local work, I'm not traveling that much. And so my work was mostly here, mostly corporate, and allowed to work because of the stricter protocols that feature films insisted upon. So it turned out to be a good place to be.
Right, right. So, in terms of overall busyness, have you been able to stay busy over the past year or so? Because I know for me, up until probably about, I would say July, it was a whole lot of nothing for me, and then things started trickling in, commercial, like very, very, very strict commercial here and there, and then some corporate stuff started spurting out. So I'm curious, as a gaffer, what has work been like for you?
Yeah, it's difficult. Uh, Sometimes you get on set and someone says, "Well, this is the second job I've had since, the beginning of the lockdown or whatever, since March."
Mm,
And, then I try to not talk too much because life has been a little bit better. I think, we had our first opportunity back in May. At that point, we decided, my wife and I decided, no, I better not do that quite yet. And then starting in June, started working little chunks here and there, and then that kind of grew, and it's been, just pretty steady. I mean, every once in a while there's a week where I don't have anything,
hmm.
which is actually perfect. As as a blogger, then you can catch up a little bit.
Right, exactly, exactly, exactly. And
Yeah.
we'll talk a little bit. I'll talk a little bit more about navigating YouTube and as being a content creator, as you would say nowadays. We have a couple questions in the chat. Jeremy has a good one. Marcos, I see your comment. I'm gonna save that for a little bit later in a future section. You mentioned unions. So Jeremy is asking, when is a good time to consider joining the union?
Yeah, that's so many different answers you could give to that, and it's a little bit of a hot potato because people have strong ideas about unions, and I think, to me, the overall concept of the union, I'm behind 100%.
Yeah.
How that works out in reality, given people's personalities, given the way a town has sort of developed over time, that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people in different areas of the states or the world. And so, you know, in some ways, Silicon Valley as a tech town with people who get paid quite well, uh, as a supporting industry in that context, the union is maybe not as strong because we get tied in with the better wages of those tech workers. Now, so yeah, there's maybe some exploitation going on, but unions came about because of exploitation of the uh, and and so where that's happening, that's where you need unions. That's why there's talk of unions, Walmart or Amazon or whatever, because when you get to these large scale situations, just like the all the production that went on in LA, well, then the studio system or whatever can be exploitative. And so then you need to band together and say, we won't work unless we have certain conditions. So now, um, we benefit from all those hard fought contracts that unions made happen. So to say that unions aren't necessary anymore would be laughable. And but it's not as easy as, oh well, union or nothing. And some people want to make that argument too. But that hasn't been my experience. So in my town, local 16, it has pluses and minuses, and depending on the personalities that are running these groups, just like corporations, personalities affect how things work. And so even if the philosophical argument is solid, sometimes the practical application
It's a little
is
bit different.
a little sketch.
Yeah,
So
for sure, absolutely.
not really
Well,
an answer, but yeah.
well, no, it's always good to talk about this stuff too.
I'd say early on, get in, and then you can make a decision, whether it's for you or whether you can see, because I can be part of the union in a sense, but now I'm because I was a freelancer forever, I'm not a fully fledged union person. I don't pay in anymore to the health unless I'm on a union job. It used to be
Hmm.
that I could pay in even if I wasn't on union jobs, but that's a whole nother matter
Hmm.
and stuff that nobody wants to discuss. It's messy. So
Hmm.
it's not cut and dried.
Interesting. Interesting. Well, that's good to know, and that's surely an important topic, especially with everything that's going on now. But first, what I would like to kind of really back a little bit, and I'd like to kind of touch upon your beginnings and how you got your start. Because, I see you're doing all this corporate stuff, all this lighting galore. Did you always know that you wanted to be a gaffer, or like how did that road begin?
Yeah. Well, I think my parents must have known because they named me Luke, and that means light.
There you go.
So,
That's a good tie in there.
yeah. But for me, no. I my my dad taught aesthetics, so philosophy of art, and when I away to college, I got into history. I enjoyed that, but the teachers I felt were better in the philosophy department, and so as a heady college kid, I enjoyed those discussions, and so then I thought, well, okay, philosophy of art, but I'll go the film route, and I'll learn about uh, uh, the purposes and all that of film, and then eventually I'll know how to make them, and I didn't know what I was thinking, but then life and the need to actually eat got in the way, and I started offering to be a gopher, PA, and then had a family friend who helped me, who dragged me on as a PA, and then they kind of taught me how to be an AC. And this was back in film days, so I was loading an Aton
Sure.
on a documentary in the wilds
So you
of
basically
Minnesota.
transitioned from being a PA to a loader. What was that
Yeah,
like?
yeah,
Was that,
yeah.
I mean, I imagine that was a little bit stressful.
I didn't know any better. I was just a kid in my early 20s, and just wanted to. I'd always so in high school in Toronto. So I grew up in Chicago. When I was 9, moved to Toronto, and then went through high school in Toronto, Minnesota, Minneapolis, St. Paul, for 2 years after college, and then came out to San Francisco. But in high school, Toronto was a great town for review cinema. So uh, I would go down often weeknights. I'd take the subway downtown and watch double headers, just old movies. I'd watch, Fassbinder and just old, European movies, New Wave,
Mm.
and just crazy stuff, and El Topo, and just Fellini films, and so Apocalypse Now and Mean Streets, that just Road Warrior, that kind of stuff just got me. My thought was, okay, I go to college. I'll learn something so I can have a job. But what I really want to do is keep going all the way to Australia to make movies there. And so that was always in the back of my mind. And then yeah, I didn't quite make it.
I mean, you sort of made it. That's kind of what you're doing now.
Yeah, no, I mean I didn't make it to Australia. So
Oh,
now,
Australia.
it seems like one of my good online friends is Andrew Locke.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
when we're allowed to travel again, I look forward to spending some time with him and his
Yeah,
wife. Yeah,
I love his insight and all of his practical. Uh, it's basically his practical insight because he'll talk about everyone loves to talk about specs and color, all the things, but like how does this single tiny little knob affect my day to day use? It's like all the small things that you would never think about. Like he has such a deep and far insight into practical onset knowledge that it's unparalleled and for me on YouTube especially.
yeah,
So
it's awesome. It's awesome. It really is. And it sort of makes me think like, you know what? I don't really need to do review stuff anymore. He's got that covered. So I can do, walk arounds or, that kind of thing. I'd be just fine with that.
right, right. No, no, I definitely hear you. I sometimes I'll watch another YouTuber's videos and I'm like, dude, well, like all right, what am I doing? Like what?
Yeah.
Anyways, that's a whole another topic. But you mentioned that you went through college. Was it film? Did you go to film school? What was your degree in?
Right. So no, so it was philosophy. I got a BA
Philosophy.
in philosophy. Yeah, and it was a school of Dort College. Now it's Dort University, and yeah, it's just out in the pig farms and cornfields of Iowa, and and but it had a philosophical viewpoint. It was part of a denominational group of colleges that come out of sort of a Reformation way of thinking about the world in terms of sort of a Protestant Christianity, and that was good. That's what I grew up in, and but it was a very thoughtful education. And I always tell people that too. It's like they'd say, "So how do I get into film? What do I take in college?" And I'm like, "Well, take liberal arts because if you want to say something with your films, uh, then you should have a point of view. You should have something to say,
Yeah.
and the tech stuff you're going to find on the job."
Yeah. All that stuff that'll just come naturally.
Yeah, yeah,
Jason in the chat has a good question here. I'll bring it up. Mentioning your father teaching aesthetics, do you reference art itself for yourself, or are you primarily concerned with technically architecting everything around lighting?
yeah. That's a really good question because a while back, Alan and I actually just a couple of years ago now, we flew out to a company that was based in Illinois to give them sort of a seminar of lighting seminar. So a couple day seminar, which was just a hoot. I mean, I had a ball, and it was just a corporate, but just sort of the basics of lighting and practically holding lights, making people do knots and set flags and stuff like that. It was fun, and then we spent a couple days in Chicago because that was rural Illinois, and then we took the train up north. And I grew up in Chicago. My dad would take us, as a family. We'd go to the Art Institute, and then we'd go on trips to Europe when he would study there, so to me, painters are like friends. So and thinking about the light, not just the Rembrandts, but the Turners and the Goyas and the just all the history of art. Yeah, no, that's always a sort of a back of mind reference to absolutely, yeah,
Hmm.
and just the brush strokes and painting with light and all those analogies are the the lily pads or the lingerie and just all that depth of other people having looked and shared their seeing of light and color and all that is everyone should pull that into their arsenal. It's not just about cameras and C stands and the shiny objects of the lights that we talk about on YouTube channels. It's yeah. I should spend more time on those aspects.
Yeah, and yeah, more so the artistry. Yeah, because especially like my cinematography mentor, he would always he claimed it widgetry, like people just being obsessed over the newest widgets that would come out, and so that's you see a lot of that on YouTube where it's just like people always fascinate, like you see all these buzzwords floating around, and it's just like sometimes it's really hard to cut through all the noise, but I definitely hear you just focusing on because thinking back to when I went to film school, like that was a lot that I got out of it too. And especially when it comes down to references, even when I'm working with new key collaborators and stuff like that, like just being able to have that language to facilitate those ideas, like it goes a long way in just communication. And so, just having that foundation of like basic language, like it just goes so much farther in just communicating your thoughts. So especially when you're building upon, whether you're building upon it or taking a bunch of references from a bunch of different projects. And when I took a film theory class, like I remember when I was a little bit younger, I took the course and I was like, oh man, this is just this dumb young kid. I was like, this is so boring, blah, blah. But then I retook the class again towards the end of my college career. And I just had so much more appreciation for it, just for the artistry of film and the language of film and being able to take away all these things. And, to this day, I still use all that, similar language to, again, communicate ideas. So,
yeah. And there's obviously a lot of ways to get to it. I mean, just having an appreciation for how sun plays or, just how things reflect off of other things and car hits and street lights and all that. You just learning from life. That's obviously crucial as well. Yeah.
Learning from life. I love that. Like I can't tell you how many photos I have in my phone of just like light being scattered through a window and just seeing the shape and textures on a wall. I have so many just random pictures. I just simple appreciations for just a way the sun can cast through like a frosted, glass window or something like that. It's the small things, but
no, let God be your gaffer. I mean, that's the
there you go.
An old saying, but it's that's who you're always learning from. It's like the moon is the biggest CRLS reflector, I mean.
Right. Exactly. So, seeing that you didn't necessarily go to film school, but you're a working professional, for someone starting out now, what external, do you utilize any external resources to kind of keep honing your craft, or what kind of ways do you kind of, stay up to date with either current technologies or techniques?
Yeah. Now, to be, I did go to a year of what was called Film in the Cities in St. Paul, Minnesota. I don't think it's around anymore, but and that was we were shooting on BLs and ARRIESs and then working on flatbed moviolas and so it was film days anyway. But let's see. Sorry, your question. How do you keep up? Well, I can't.
Fair enough.
These days, I think, it felt like when I started the channel, maybe, 4.5 years ago or so, there wasn't that much BTS kind of stuff. It came mostly from camera people or whatever. But now it's almost like I feel like I don't have to do this anymore. There's plenty of people showing their stuff and talking about it and doing it better than I do. So I learn from just the simplest things, just seeing examples on Facebook groups, the Aperture folks or BTS groups or whatever they are, Insta. Um, it's like it doesn't help to think you're above it because
Right.
you've been around for 30 plus years. No, it just the youngest person on your crew has something to teach you, and so I appreciate the Harry Box book and Alan's book and that kind of stuff, and autobiographies, interesting. Now, I mean, I don't know if it's kind of blew up during COVID, but I mean, like the ASC Clubhouse interviews.
Absolutely.
There's the stuff put out by Cook, Wandering DP. It's just on and on and on. I mean, man, if this stuff was around when I was starting out, uh, I don't know. I mean, probably wouldn't have taken 30 years to get to where I am. I just think of
Right.
myself as being kind of slow, and so I don't regret any of it. But now it seems like there's just so much. Uh, it's just it's crazy how much information and experience is being shared. It's fantastic.
Well, to that point, I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on this. How now this is more so pertaining to YouTube, but do you have a sort of way to vet, so to speak, information, since there is so much information on YouTube? How do you know, so to speak, that what you're watching is good information? Is there bad information, do you
Yeah.
think?
Well, I think that's a good question, because yeah, there's a lot of just sort of show kids, where it's just like, hey, see this, I opened the box and now I got this, and it has all these cool things, and they're just saying what the marketing said.
Sure,
Now,
yeah.
fair enough. I've done some of that myself, and I look back at those videos and I just want to slap myself. So it's like. Um, when you find someone that has some experience and spends some time with uh, units, like an Andrew, uh, and there's you can find that in car repair and all kinds of stuff. But um, how do you weed that out? Yeah, that's pretty difficult unless you have the experience yourself.
That's right.
Yeah,
It's a question I'm always trying to answer myself, because like I myself, like, I like to think of myself as having a pretty well calibrated BS meter that I can pull up to a video. But for, like you said, for those that just don't have those miles under their belt, it's like, how do you know it's really easy to take everything what everyone says at face value, and so it's always an interesting question that I'm always trying to answer.
right. I think the main thing is don't buy everything. Rent it, and then and then uh, that cuts through the hype, and you go, okay, so this sounded good, but it's heavy, it's awkward, the interface sucks, so all those nice videos that showed it off to be this best thing since sliced bread, well, it's not. It's not what I need, not what I want, and boy, I'm glad I didn't buy this. So
Yeah,
now
exactly.
that's it's harder if you're in more rural and you don't have access to new gear or whatever. um, Going to trade shows is sort of one step beyond watching the videos on online. But there too, it can be a little bit of a dog and pony, smoke and mirror situation. So you have to be careful. And this stuff isn't cheap. So if you can only afford, three good lights, then those are going to be difficult decisions. And so people will ask you, online, just out of the blue, what do I buy? And you're like, I don't know. What are you doing? You
Yeah,
know, it's like,
that's exactly
what
what
do
I
you
said in my
hope to
last
do?
stream. It's like people always ask me, "What camera do I get?" It
Yeah,
depends. Well, what do you? It's like I have a video like just talking just about that. But no, absolutely, I hear you. Jason also has another good comment in the chat. He's saying that I think a good way of weeding out some of the information is simply looking at what the person is producing and seeing if it's something that you also want to have under your belt. So
yeah, and that's the hard thing too for me anyway, because I'm not the camera person, I'm not the producer, I'm not the person funding the project. So having access to show the project for my vlog, it's
yeah,
like that's not always their first priority, And so I often can't show, and people are like, "Wow, it'd be really nice if we could see an image of it." I'm like, "Yeah, it'd be nice,"
yeah,
but I
you're
can't.
telling me. I hear you.
Yeah,
That's the constant struggle because you want to show your practical application and practical experience, but sometimes it's like, well, I signed an NDA. Uh, I'm sorry. I can, you know, maybe vaguely talk about it, but in terms of actually showing it, gets a little bit harder. Marcos Roca, I think you're familiar with him. He's got
yeah,
another question in the chat. Can you share your thoughts on cine reflectors or a light bridge?
yep, yep, yeah. Well, so interesting story. I over the holidays, just that we went through, I got together with the DP because we were both interested in playing with them, and so I set up just a sort of basic scene, M18 coming through an 8 by of magic cloth, and um, took the light readings for that. And then just for yucks, we thought like, oh, well, while we're here, why don't we throw up two 60Ds and see how that would compare with the M18? And like, oh, you know what? 600Ds, two
I was about to say, I was
600s.
like, got my eyebrow raising for a sec. I was
Yeah.
like, okay.
So two 600Ds, we had to turn both of them down to 80% to get the same, output for the M18. Then we thought, okay, we'll just clear all this stuff out, and and we'll light it the same way, gray backdrop with reflectors, and we gave ourselves a couple more stops. We had a 800 Joker coming up from below, and then having first just a single reflector and then two reflectors and do a double bounce and stuff. And we just couldn't get to the same look.
Hmm.
And so then I was, emailing back and forth with Jacob, and he's like, well, yeah, it doesn't change physics. There's a reason why we like that big, soft,
Right.
look. And so, and then I thought, I love that. He's just, straight up. He's like, yeah, if we had started from scratch with the reflectors, we would have gotten ourselves a nice look and enjoyed that. But it wasn't a one-to-one switch. We were hoping for a revelation, just like
Hmm.
a total, change of the way we thought about lighting, and so it wasn't that in my situation. So I said, okay, how I'm going to approach this is from time to time, I'm going to incorporate some CRLS reflectors into, the way I normally light. And so I'm just starting to do that. I'm a little slow, like I said, but now that's starting to happen, and that's a lot of fun because uh, then it's also a nice way to sort of show it to a DP because there aren't that many DPs in my area that are all gung ho to use them, and
Right.
so it's that's a way to sort of say, hey, I got these reflectors. They're very focused and they have different levels of um, reflection that can add to what we're doing, and then it works out. So I'm just starting to incorporate this more additive than take over from scratch.
Well, that's something I super appreciate too as a DP is like whenever, my gaffer comes to me like, oh, we have these, I usually use these fixtures for this, blah, blah, blah. And even though it's something I haven't used before, it's like, okay, well, yeah, absolutely. I'm super open to it. And I love those kinds of relationships too, is because, and that's something that I just would have never have known about, just not because, I talked about this all the time. It's like a lot of people don't rent, a lot of people like prefer renting, sky panels as opposed to like a Gemini or a Titan, and not because those options aren't good, but because they just don't know about them. So that's something that I, especially now as technology is just constantly changing, that like, it's, I love being open-minded to just new techniques, new technologies, new methods of doing what we do.
Yeah, it's interesting. Over the years, you see how people get into, I wouldn't call them ruts, but into sort of comfortable paths.
Comfortable,
And
yeah.
and so that's true with the people they work with, which you appreciate. You appreciate to be that person's first call or second call or whatever it is. And But people have that with gear as well. And so sometimes it's nice to break out of that a little bit and try something new. You can also get into the other path of it's always got to be something new, and you're always pushing the envelope, and you're
Right,
always, and
right.
then that's a whole nother thing. And then you have a garage full, like I do, of,
Well, it's interesting you say
yeah,
that is because, well, it's not only that in terms of just gear, but people just in terms of general video making itself. It's like people are always trying to push the envelope, and like there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with always trying to make your next video big project, whatever, better. But like at the same time, when clients come to me and they're like, well, we just want to push the envelope. We want to use new gear, new methods, whatever. It's like, well, dude, we're filming conferences. Like, what? How groundbreaking do you want these to look? And it's like, given the appropriate subject matter, like I'm all for it. But like sometimes I feel like people just, want the new for the sake of new.
absolutely, yeah. What's the new shiny thing? And yeah, I'm actually kind of thankful that I don't do a whole lot of commercials, because then often, there's more layers
Yeah.
often involved. And then also, if you have someone that comes in and wants to, I want all these latest and greatest, and that's great, but then you often end up then sub-renting all those things,
Right. Exactly.
and that's
And
not a
then you
great
got to
way to
keep
pay
on
off.
track of
Yeah,
all those different
yeah,
1099s. You got to, oh man, woof.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I'd like to kind of start moving into the world of YouTube now. So you have a pretty successful, like people like just in the chat, people are telling you've been mentioning, why do I need to make these? You got people in the chat here saying to please don't stop because people absolutely love your videos and your content. So even from me, I will say that I personally, I hope you don't stop creating content. But I'm curious. You mentioned that you started creating YouTube content 4.5 years ago or so. What created that? Like, where did that arise from? Why did
Sure,
you
sure.
create a
Yeah.
channel?
Well, we have something that's called the Real Directory in town here, and that's it's a paper-based
Whoa.
book that is also online. But that was sort of the 911 that in LA, or 411, I guess it is. You get information of crews in different departments and stuff like that. So I went to the publisher of that and said, hey, I can make little videos for people, and you have access to all these folks in this book. You know, you just tell them there's a little premium. I come out and do a little bit because we're all in film, we're all in video. We should have little videos about what we do.
Right, right, right.
and and they were like, yeah, other people have mentioned that, but you can contact all those people. Go for it. And so I'm like, oh, okay, that wasn't the plan.
That's the
That
answer I
didn't work.
wanted.
Bad pitch. I'm just a crappy salesperson. So I thought, like, well, I'll make one for myself. And then Alan Steinheimer was just like, "Hey, could you do one for me?" And I'm like, "Sure." So we did one for him, and then he's like, "Another thing you could talk about is like, this." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, okay." And we thought we'd do like 10 maybe. And then it just sort of became a thing, and uh, I thought I'd run out of information or content,
Content.
but then it just snowballed and turned into a really fun community in a sense. You know
Absolutely.
the Yeah. So that's all.
Well, I mean, I always love watching your videos and just taking away from all the different ways you can light anything, any different ways you can light a face, different ways you can light a. I think you did one with Evan Oliver where you lit the all the trucks, in that big
Yeah.
warehouse space. That was super fun. All the rooftop commercials, like, and now you're been doing a lot of the corporate stuff. So I mean, for me, like in being based in Vegas, like back when things were a little bit normal, like that was our bread and butter. That's like all that's Vegas for you. It's like, and I think a handful of your videos you were in Vegas. You did them here while you were here in the hotel or during
Yeah.
some convention. So, did you get to travel out here often?
To Vegas.
Yeah, for
Um,
work.
yeah, there were, let's see. Yeah, sometimes we would do, those kind of where the company's like, "Hey, we're going to have all our people in Vegas anyway, so come out here and shoot interviews, while we're out here." So we did. I've done some of that over the years, and um, yeah, and some of those, yeah, you pick up gear in the city,
Hmm.
um, and yeah, we were doing stuff for a bank, where we'd go out to, travel around the U.S. So that's when I was really into like getting the Aladdin into a breakdownable frame and all that kind of thing. But yeah, often the jobs. Well, we did one in Vegas where we had two backdrops and two or three cameras, and
Right, right,
it was
right.
just me, two camera guys, and a sound guy. And sometimes we wouldn't have the sound guy, and I'd be the sound guy too. And
Just wearing multiple
so
hats.
yeah, just scrappy situation. But I always love those road trips because they're not too long, and uh, yeah, you just sort of have
Do you usually
we're all
drive
in this
those?
together. Drive it? No,
Do you usually
no,
fly them? I
we'd
assume.
fly it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
So you take a couple Astras, you take a couple, small units, or you
Right.
take a, 800 Joker or something like that, or you pick up everything but the cameras.
I'm curious.
Yeah.
Do you happen to know any of the rental houses here? Is there a place that you usually rent from?
The last time it was just a single gaffer who had equipment, but it's a few years ago, so
Okay.
his name is escaping me, but he
No
was
worries.
great.
I was just curious, just
He,
for out of my own personal
yeah,
curiosity.
he
Rob,
dropped off. It was great.
Rob over here has another a good question. As a traditional creator, did Uncle Luke find YouTube to be a creative release as well as a lucrative, I guess, side lucrative, I guess, avenue during last year's lockdown?
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. So, I'm kind of a crappy YouTuber in that I don't list all my gear and have all the Amazon links and so I have Patreon, but I'm pretty low key about it. I make, enough money doing my job.
Sure.
And so if I have to put all that brain power into like, somehow making it yeah, I totally appreciate that people need to make a living on YouTube. That's just not me. So I don't put my energy that way. But so, however, during lockdown, it's been a great way to figure out a little more tech. Of course, humorously for this,
Yeah.
I couldn't get it to work for some reason. But yeah, so learning Ecamm a little bit. I mean, I haven't even figured out how to put the comments on like you have there, the responses.
It's super
I
easy. Just
know,
click it.
yeah, yeah. It sounds easy, but yeah. Anyway, and I've only done the one live, and and then I flipped everything because I wanted to see myself in the camera properly,
Right, right,
and
right.
then that flipped everything, and like this was
Mirrored.
backwards. Yeah. Anyway, blah blah. So yeah, lockdown has been good in terms of uh, me getting my interviewing stuff better put together. But it was only really, you know, end of March, April, May, and then I was back in June. So yeah.
Yeah, well for me, like my channel was pretty much dead last year. Like I only started recently uploading back in probably about August. And
Oh,
that's partly because again, going back to the practical experiences, like that's kind of the perspective of my channel personally. Like I love showing, you know, like me actually doing the thing as opposed to just,
yeah.
filming a talking head. So like, and for most of last year, that was just non-existent. So it's like, I was talking with my buddy Jeremy about this today. I was saying that like for me, I always try to, determine goals and figure out goals. And I really wanted to list some concrete goals for YouTube. And I think I figured out that my primary goal for YouTube is to have always put YouTube secondary, if that makes sense. Like,
Uh-huh.
so it's like, cause that's like the whole angle of my, spiel is that like I'm showing practical application and stuff like that. So like, like you said, I can appreciate those content creators and stuff like that who are like that's their full-time job. And, I'm sure they make great money at it. But, it's a lot of times I'll see like some of the bigger creators that they'll start in production and then, dabble into YouTube and then transition full time into YouTube because it can get pretty lucrative.
Yeah.
To whereas I'm sort of the opposite. Like I'm starting a production and like starting a YouTube channel. Like I always want that to be secondary. Like
Yeah.
never got into this for the numbers to be famous for money or whatever. Like I just did it because I thought it was cool. So I'm curious for like how that turns back on you. Like, do you have any concrete goals for your channel? Like how do you want it to grow? Like, what does that look like? What does the future look like for
Yeah.
you?
That's a good question because I sort of go on these little tears of now I'm doing a whole bunch of things, reviews or whatever, and then I think like it's getting weighted too much, then I do some walkthroughs and then I thought, well, so like I haven't done any travel talks for a while. I like to get back to those.
Hmm.
I like to have sort of spice it up, or just have difference.
Variety. Yeah.
Yeah, variety. Thank you. Good word. And so, and then recently, I've been having this kind of like uh, need to really think about these review videos because I just feel inadequate in them because I don't spend the time to really learn the unit to be able to talk about it in any
Right.
depth. And then I think like that's not fair, and so it'd be better if I could have a unit and work it into my regular work so I can do a walkthrough with it and really feel confident about it. Uh, and but the other thing that you find with a channel, if you're if people give me way too much credit for being knowledgeable. It's like they think like, oh, so much, and you're so thoughtful, you're such a good teacher, and I'm thinking like, no, I'm just a regular guy that has a big mouth, and so I always want to keep that attitude because some people start thinking they're more than they are, and it's like no, we're all going through this the same way. We're all figuring this stuff out, and and uh, yeah, I'm not quite sure where I was going with that question, but yeah, I guess so. What in my perfect world, what I would do is when we can get back to traveling, is is hang out with people in different parts of the world, different states, whatever, see how they do things. Because we all do things just a little bit differently. We might
Right.
have, some of the same gear, but I'd love to go to India, just see how
Especially when you talk
they're doing.
internationally.
Yeah, yeah. And now I'm starting to get some, international friends through the vlog. I mean, to me, the community aspect of it, the sharing, that is much more interesting to me than uh, the shiny toy stuff.
Yeah, it's really interesting where people place their value in a lot of that stuff. Like again, for me, like again, I see it's so much value and so much more, I guess, fulfillment from the community aspect. Like like you, I have a Patreon and I have a little Discord server. It's like a little Slack, like a little basically friend group. But it's nice because we all bounce ideas off each other and we're always asking for help. It's like a Facebook group pretty much. So it's like that whole community aspect is you know far more valuable to me than any, super chat or any kind of affiliate commission, all that stuff. And
Totally.
again, back to what you said about, wanting to spend real considerable amounts of time with equipment. Like that's something that I always struggle with too, because especially in terms of YouTube, like if you're not first, you're pretty much last, especially with all the embargoes, there's so much gear just constantly always coming out. Like, for me, like people always ask me, they always want reviews from me, like camera reviews or whatever. But like, I
Yeah.
always almost refuse because I want to spend at least a year with a camera before I actually put out my thoughts
Yeah.
on it. Because, again, like right now, for instance, Rotolight. Did you get a Rotolight Titan or no?
No, no.
So
I have not. No.
so a
Some
bunch.
people have asked me, yeah, that kind of, but yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of creators on the platform have been getting like review units and stuff like that in, and me being one of them, I'm very fortunate for that. But then a lot of people have been just pumping out these videos, and then like for me, like I was telling my contact, like I want to wait like at least if I want to put this piece of gear out on like a minimum 3 jobs before I even think about what I'm going to say. And even today I was using it on set, and there are things that I really really like, some things maybe not so much. And it's interesting because like nobody is talking about these things, and it's kind of the thing where it's like, man, I wish Andrew Locke, he probably would have talked about him for one. But it's interesting because I like just again I like spending considerable amount of time with equipment before I spew my weird thoughts out into the internet.
Yeah. Well, and what I'm finding is it feels to me that I'm watering down my cred by being too quick. Now, because, Andrew will get a piece of gear and he'll take real time with that sucker
Mm-hmm.
and really, get to the base of it. So I think like, what? Why don't we just all wait and hear from Andrew?
Exactly.
And,
Right.
and then we'd just be all better off, and you wouldn't have this cacophony of all these voices
Just
of
noise.
people. Yeah, yeah. So it seems like the world would be a little better off that way. But
Absolutely.
it's hard because everybody's pushing you. Now, I really respect Rubidium Wu, the Crimson
Crimson
Engine.
Engine. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
I love that guy. And the way he's been able to, incorporate his work on a feature and then his reviews, and then he turns his reviews into, uh, in-depth manuals, basically of different gear,
Mm-hmm.
and he's doing well with that. And to me, he's a guy that's doing a good job of that kind of approach. And he's always told me like, hey, you could do this, you could do that, and I'm like, yeah, I know, I'm crap. I'm just not doing it right. But I'm glad you're doing it. It's
I'm
just,
glad someone's doing it.
yeah, it doesn't. I'm sort of anti, you know,
Well, I think it's because
I
a
don't know.
lot of people like really appreciate like your insight. Because like, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what that's is all about. Like even like this stream is like that one thing that I just love is the novelty of everyone's different perspectives and experiences. So like, even though that you yourself might think that, I'm just pouring a bucket into the ocean. Well, yes, but like you said, like everyone does things just a little bit differently to where it's
Yep.
like that difference could mean a lot to someone. So that's just
Right.
my two
And
cents.
yeah, and we're interested in seeing how someone else does it. Like Alan will even say, I mean, he's a much better gaffer than I am, and he's just like, yeah, sometimes I like watching your videos because you're doing it a little differently. Even though we've known each other for 30
Right.
years and we basically think the same. It's like we
Right.
still do
Exactly.
things differently. So yeah, yeah.
So how has it been navigating the world of YouTube, but also like staying on top of professional work? Is maybe that a contributing factor as to why, um, maybe you don't like as you said, like, what's the point of me doing it? Maybe I'll just wait for someone else to do it. Is it because you're maybe bogged down with professional work, or what's it like been kind of balancing the two?
Yeah. Well, it'd be nice if it was just work and YouTube, but of course there's life as well and family, and so depending on what other organizations you're part of, sometimes that takes
Sure.
away your time, and I I I would feel empty or wrong or something was missing if I didn't put out an episode every
Mm,
week, and and uh, and now it's been 2 weeks, sometimes it's 3 weeks, and I'm not crazy about that. I wish I could do it more regularly, uh, but that's because there's something else that's sort of sucking my time, uh, and that's okay. Again, it's variety, but um, I I miss being able to be a little more regular with vlogging, and so that I'd like to get back to that. But your question was, so to me, the the really nice indirect thing that's come out of the vlog is people from out of town feel comfortable with you before they work with you, and I get
mm.
a fair amount of work from that. That's awesome.
That
I
is really
mean,
cool.
because San Francisco is a destination city, and of course a little less during COVID, but still, people have been flying in, and uh, that's a huge benefit. The other benefit is having a seat at the table with manufacturers. It's not about the free gear; it's about them listening to your feedback or your like, hey, this could be better kind of thing. Uh, that's huge. I mean, I didn't see that coming. That's just a really nice thing. And now with the COVID situation, you don't have uh, events. You don't have
Yeah.
trade shows. So then they're looking to how to get the word out. Well, then they come to you, and so that's been good. And like I guess a lot of people would say, I've been sucked into the aperture world, but I'm totally fine with that because they get it. They're
Killing it.
innovating, they're doing what they can to provide equipment for all ranges of people. It's like, yeah, like that 600D, uh, it's become my go-to light. It's so simple to have something quickly available, you know, and uh, yeah, just very flexible as a light. And yeah, what am I going to do? Say that I can't use that light because it's not.
Airy or whatever. Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like no, it's a really good tool.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I love that light, and having something so adaptable and powerful and all of the above. Basically, aperture has been just killing. Like that's what I'm using right now to light the scene. That's one of my two lights, and just it's illuminating the entire room. Like you can't get. I'm still waiting on my Fresnel though. Like I don't know where they're at with that at all, but I cannot wait
I think they're
to get.
coming out now.
Okay.
More quickly. Yeah, uh, yeah,
I
because someone, yeah, who told me he was going to get his today. So
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I just absolutely cannot wait to get mine because, in terms of just sheer output, like the included reflector is wonderful, but like, dude, once you throw a 10-inch Fresnel on there, oh, dude.
yeah, yeah, no, it's great, and yeah, this last month, I've been using both of them either in soft boxes or with the Fresnel, and it's been yeah, a game changer in a lot of ways. It's like having another HMI
Right.
that
It's dimmable and you can
that's
do
dimmable.
plus
Yeah,
more. So from
yeah.
your perspective as a gaffer, like since now that it's, basically like a Joker 800, what are the main, like, if you're trying to decide between a 600, like if you're trying to decide which one to use for a job, like what is your thought process on deciding between the two?
Uh, Again, I'm sort of an additive person, so I'm using my Joker 800 more than ever. I'm just using it as a Jolico.
Hmm.
So, um, uh, and yeah, I mean, in a, even though the quality of light of say tungsten, I would prefer that in a lot of ways. But in our environment, in the speed that we're asked to work, in the flexibility that a DP wants out of you as a worker, and by extension your lights, LEDs are the way to go. And so eventually they'll all be RGB. I
Hmm.
mean that, and then maybe there will be something besides LEDs that will, you know, extend that, make,
I
but
know plasma was on a hot kick for a while, but I think that fizzled out.
yeah, I tried,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's before I started vlogging, which was good. But yeah, and yeah, so I think that's just where we're going. That's where history is arcing, so you follow it, and not everything is wonderful, but like the last review by Andrew of that ProLight Orion, um, it's a wonderful light. I mean, it really is. It doesn't have a ton of output, but neither does the orbiter, according to its cost. It's like,
Right.
because you think like, oh, if I'm spending that much money, then I should have this level of output, and you forget that you're getting all these other capabilities, and so we have this like really short-term memory, and but sort of like a mini orbiter is this Orion. It just the fan is a little loud, so it's difficult if you're using it close to an interview, or talking to people. So there's all these things that are marching ahead, and yeah, the choice right now for me uh, is additive, and so I want to see something's got to be really worthwhile, really good in kind of like a couple different ways in order for it to push out something else that's already on the truck.
Right.
So it's sort of like the shelf at the grocery store. It's like we got a whole thing of Oreos here. Well, now we have this new cookie. It's like, is it better than an Oreo?
I
You
love this
know.
Oreo comparison.
So yeah,
Yeah, and just aperture, they've just been slaying it. Like I feel like whatever even from whether it's a 60 or 600, like people are just generally excited about their products, and rightfully so. And not only their products, but like their content too. Like a lot of their education on YouTube is so good, and that was one of my big kind of gripes just with YouTube in general. Probably 3-4 years ago, is that like the quality of information on YouTube like wasn't that great. But now I feel like there's a lot, and kind of speaking to what we were talking about earlier, is like now I'm starting to see a lot of really, really, really good information. And I think, part of that is, on Aperture's behalf too. So,
well, like, what's her name is
Valentina V.
B. Oh my goodness. She's just killing it. Yeah, it's great.
Right.
I love what she does. And that kind of stuff is gold, especially for people starting out.
Exactly.
And just to see how you can make a lot happen with a little is fantastic.
Exactly. So now I kind of want to more so move on to a little bit more lighting now that we've kind of transitioned. And I want to circle back from a question that Marcos had from earlier. He asked, how often do you have to figure out the lighting of the day? How often do you have to figure out the lighting the day of the shoot as opposed to having a general plan before showing up?
Yeah, well, luckily the jobs I'm on tend to be on the smaller side. So then, and often if I'm working with someone that I've worked with a lot of times, they'll just say like, you know what, you have all the stuff we need.
Mm-hmm.
And so you just kind of show up and you have your scout, the first 15 minutes of the day.
What's a scout?
That's one.
No. Oh yeah, there you go. The 15 minutes.
Quick walkthrough. Before we take anything out, let's walk through the building, and see what we're going to do. And then okay, then I'll take these things out of the truck.
Right.
And so that's sort of on the one side. The other side is you have, discussions ahead of time. Maybe you even get boards, and then you can visualize. For me, the main thing is, what do I have to subrent? Is there anything I have to get from somewhere else? And is it going to fit in the truck? Or do I just scrap the truck and get someone else to come with a bigger truck? And so that's sort of my first thing. And then, how many guys do I get? How many people do you have budgeted? And is that enough? Do we have a dolly? It's like that usually takes an extra person. People often think like, oh yeah, we'll just have a dolly. And they're like, oh, well, no, you need someone else. And so there's those sort of logistical things. And even on a scout, often you can walk through a space and people say, well, I think we'll have, a push from here and we'll have a little something there. And then if we could, change out those bulbs for, something that we have control over, and then, have a little something in the background. And you think like, okay, yeah. And then it changes on the day. So you always have to have a little bit more available. It's always what they ask for plus.
Right.
Yeah. And just be able to pivot.
Yeah, and that's something that I found, because like a few years ago, I ended up purchasing a cargo van. So having that just in general, just having a bigger vehicle, just to even basically haul more stuff than because that, again, that happens all the time. Like you end up needing more than the Scout had entailed. So, okay, no problem. I have a few extra combos in the van. I have a few extra seats, whatever. I'll go grab them.
Yeah.
And then, similar to, I think, what you usually do, you usually bill per what's pulled off the truck, correct?
Right. And, now some people can take issue with that approach. It's kind of like, well, that'd be nice, but, if I have multiple vehicles, then I'd like to have, just what they ask for. So then I can have multiple vehicles go out. Right. Well, I don't have multiple vehicles. So everything is either on the truck or, in the garage kind of thing. And I don't even have a workspace. I don't have a shop. So I try to keep it to that, and that restricts the type of work people call me for, because it's easier to call Alan, who has a bunch of other uh, gaffers that share his space that he can pull from. So if he doesn't have all the things that he needs, he can quickly pull from those folks, and away he goes. So that works for bigger productions, for commercials, for larger jobs. For me, I tend to do jobs where all the equipment I have is overkill,
Hmm.
which I like. I like to have the cushion of that. So uh, we just need four or five. Oh, now we need 10 lights. Great, I got them.
I'll bill
And
you.
we're good to go. Yeah, yeah, yeah. and yeah, and I don't necessarily these days with LEDs, they cost more than the tungsten world, and even HMIs on some level. So um, there's always discounts to fit budgets and stuff like that.
Sure.
Often I just think of, I want to do this to make the DP feel like she's got the image that they want, within reason. But um, yeah, that's how I like to roll.
And speaking on that relationship, what for you? What does an ideal relationship look like for you? Is it having a DP that comes to you with lighting plots, like comes to you with, I want a Jolico here, or I want an 8 by here, this pushing through that, or do you like it being kind of left open to be like, oh, I think I want a little push here, like in your world, in your ideal situation, what kind of
Yeah.
relationship?
I think sort of open collaboration is always ideal. So people, they may say a fixture, like I was thinking an M18 ish, or an 800 or whatever, and then you say like, okay, 800, would this work as well? If we want more control, more dimmability or whatever, then hey, have you tried the 600D? It's like, okay, and then maybe we'll use the 800 as this, glow out the window or whatever. Uh, and and so most people, certainly at the level that I work, are open to that. Now, sometimes people will give you a list like, this is what's required because that's what we're shooting all the other ones in all the other
Right, right.
cities.
I've gotten a few of those
Uh,
too.
yeah. And then you go, oh, okay. But they're often ready to hear the local business say, well, I don't have that, but I have this. I don't have that, I have this, and
And
sometimes
not
they'll,
only that, I have
yeah,
this, and I can do that with this, and kind of almost convincing
right,
them, so to
right.
speak,
Yeah,
in that sense.
yeah.
Yeah,
And,
I've definitely had to do that a few times.
and you've had it the other way too, where someone tries to talk you into a lesser thing,
Right,
So
always.
I only try to talk people into something that has more capabilities, not fewer capabilities.
Right, right, right.
It's like, well, have you tried this? And that's a fun thing too. People come from cities where maybe they don't have access to the latest and greatest, and you go, well, have you tried this? Would you like to do that? And they're like, oh yeah, that'd be fun. So that's fun.
Right, exactly. We have a kind of a good question here from the per resonator. Pull it up. How do you guys manage time as a student producing stuff, mostly pro bono for now? I find this extremely difficult. So, Luke, how do you manage your time?
Manage time to do vlogging, or
Yeah,
just
yeah,
manage time, period?
yeah. I would say maybe managing time for work, managing time as your regular day job. How do you manage that?
Well, these days it's really simple because it's just, my daughter's no longer at home. She's moved out, and it's just myself and my wife, and we're both very easy, living together, especially in COVID. We figured figured that out. And so uh, yeah, yeah. I mean, this is an awesome job, really. I mean, I like to work 3 days a week. Try not to work too much more than that. It's a physical job. It takes it out of you. You're lifting stuff constantly. You want to keep your body, through retirement, if there is such a thing. Then not working every day is a real blessing, really. And so and then you have some down days to do your paperwork. You if you have a job the next day, I try to make a habit of getting the truck and everything ready that night before or the day before, no matter how tired I am. Because in the morning, if something goes wrong and I
Forget about it.
need that time to load in or something like that, I mean, load stuff or exchange stuff, it's going to be painful and I may be late. And I always want to be early.
Hmm.
So um, I guess that's a little thing, but managing time is tough, especially these days with social media. It just it's a time suck, and it's horrible, really. As wonderful as it is, it's horrible, and so uh, and sometimes you just have to let the vlog go or whatever, so you spend time with your loved ones, and because this business is terrible on relationships. It's just
Yeah.
it's ludicrous. So there are just as many divorces behind the camera as in front of the camera.
That's a good way to put
You
it.
you hear about the stars, but that's all going on in crew land too.
Hmm.
So you can screw up just by inattention uh, as easily as the big names. you know? So you need to take care of the relationships and the people in your life.
And I also will say that you mentioned that you like as a student that will just crush your schedule for one. I remember me because when I was in college, that was about the time when I started freelancing. It was rough. Like balancing school and work, it almost just doesn't happen because a lot of times, especially towards the end of my college career, I had classes with attendance policies and stuff like that where you had to make sure that you were there, you returned during the break, after the break, because that's when they roll called attendance, and it was like having to balance. It put me in a really tough spot because there were a couple times where I was like, okay, I have to balance, you know, going to class and maintaining my attendance between paying rent. And I was like, it has put me in a super difficult spot. So I will say, once you are out of school, once you don't have just your time sucked with all of that, that helps infinitely. Just being able to just solely focus on work. So it
That's true. I didn't
sucks.
really answer that question. Yeah, I mean, being a student and trying to work, yeah, and then having a side job or something too.
Right.
Yeah, balancing all those things, that's not easy.
It's
Uh,
super,
yeah,
super difficult. I would say like there are times like, and again, I had to balance, okay, which jobs do I want to take? And then the thing you have to remember is that like the work will always be there. So even if you have to turn down a job for whatever reason, work will always be there to come back. So that's another thing to keep in mind that I kind of had a hard time grasping when I was kind of first starting out. So um, yeah, it's tough.
it's still hard.
It's still hard. It sucks.
But
You got to just get through it.
if you're a
And
freelancer, you always want to be available,
yep,
and you're
absolutely.
not.
Yeah, it never stops. So it's just really that's another thing college is preparing you for. So,
Yeah.
so I just have a couple more questions, and before we wrap things up, regarding kind of speaking back on the relationship between the DP, like what are some like traits that you look for in a key collaborator, whether it's a DP director? What are some things you look for in an ideal collaborator?
Right, right. Yeah. Uh, huh. Good question. I'm just thinking the people that I enjoy working with the most, uh, they listen to you from time to time, which is nice, and actually take to heart your contributions. And because, I'm used to having everything shot down. Yeah, I mean that's how I go into something. It's like, I always want to make the person I'm working for feel like A, it's their idea,
Hmm.
and B, they're doing a great job.
Yeah.
If you're trying to show off and have some kind of attitude about how things should be done, and the person you're working for doesn't want to do them, you're just asking for trouble. That's not a good working relationship. So a good working relationship is you being humble about your ideas and saying, you don't know everything they're having to think about. They're having to see a larger picture than you are, probably. That's why it's good to have the opportunity to work in almost every area of production. Everybody should try to be a producer. Everybody should try to be a camera person. Everybody should try to be craft service. And because it then you can appreciate that everyone has other things they're thinking about than you.
Perspective.
Or
You can appreciate
yeah,
their
yeah,
perspective. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
and and so yeah, I guess when you work with people who care about you, not just that you're doing what they want, you can tell. If the if the set feels more like a family than like an army, it's that's a wonderful place to be.
Hmm.
Sometimes you can't afford that. You know, when you have 50 people, better be doing their job, and then you can have friendly time later.
Right.
Because else people get hurt. If you're sloppy or not paying attention. So there's a time and a place for everything. But when you can work with competent friends, that's a wonderful place to be.
Hmm. Yeah, and again, just having that friendly demeanor and just treating people with respect goes such a long way. And I always like, no matter what position anyone is, like whether they're a PA or an AC or director, line producer, whatever. Like I'm always, I'll obviously always treat everyone the same. And I mean, just to give a quick anecdote. I was working, I was as an AC. This was a number of years ago when I was kind of still starting out, and it was for a Netflix show that's out. And the DP there, this was I would say maybe reality based. I don't want to really say too much, but there was a lot of cameras. There was like 20 plus, I would say, cameras. It was ridiculous, and with a total of like 3 ACs. It was wild. So I had the DP. They wanted to get this pickup shot here. Hey, repatch this cable. I just give me any cable. And so, okay, repatch your camera. And then they turn around and the director's like on the walkie, hey, all the names are mixed up. I'm trying to give call outs. The names are mixed up. And the DP turns around to and just like screaming at me. He's like, fix it. Like, just like, I took a deep, hard like breath to myself. And I was like, dude, this isn't how like all these sets are run, is it? Because if it is, like I need to rethink maybe if this is a right career for me. But that DP was such a douchebag, and I'm sort of grateful in a way because like, it gives me something to strive for, that something that I never ever want to be, never something that I never ever want to become. So, again, I don't get how some people can just scream and yell at people and just treat them without any regards of any respect. So, I mean, at the end of the day, that's like kind of, it's the golden rule. So,
But it's true. Some people actually think that they need to be jerks
yeah,
to get ahead
yeah.
and to have respect, and just. But that's true in life. That's true in business, and we can be better than that. So you learn from the good role models and the poor role models, and then you try to be a good one going forward. But yeah, it's actually good to be hammered on a, not hammered drunk, but I mean hammered uh, into submission kind of thing, like
Hmm.
boot camp. That it's good to have gone through that. Features do that to you, and episodics. You just think like, what am I doing here? This is crazy.
Yeah.
But you get to the other side and you think like, okay, now I have muscle memory for this work. I know what needs to happen. So you go through that trial and you come out of it harder. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And so that can be a worthwhile. Just doing a bunch of features is just such good um, training.
Yeah, and I at the end of the day, like I always think back on it, and I think to me it really just came down to leadership. Like that's something that like you can tell when someone is a good leader because they can teach how wrong, just utterly wrong you did something, but not just publicly berate you in front of a 50 plus crew. So it's like, again, rather than just using your emotions and just screaming your lungs off at this kid AC, it's like, well, hey, maybe let's, take it back, take a deep breath. Let's regroup and maybe we can approach this a different way. So, I mean, ultimately that's something that I really appreciate, is just good leadership and just, being respectful. So,
Yep. Those same people are yelling at their kids in public,
Oh, goodness gracious.
Yeah. Yeah. So, some
That's
people
rough.
are just incredibly insecure and
Yeah.
it's difficult to accept that in the moment, but you just have to get through without becoming like them. And,
Right.
yeah. And then don't work for them again if you can help it. But,
Yeah.
at the beginning, you can't afford not to work for people like
Yeah.
that every once in a while. So
Mm-hmm.
you suck it up.
Yeah, and that's when you kind of really hit the sweet spot is when you can kind of pick and choose the job that you want to work on. So, again, that's a really good testament to that. I want to kind of close things off with this comment from Ryder. He says, Ryder's saying, "You guys are both awesome. What do you think Aperture should make next to fill out their offerings?"
Well, I think they're going to make it whether we ask for it or not. Uh, and Yeah, I think they're going to continue moving their units towards RGB just because
Yeah.
it's the right thing to do. You're going to get your uh, color science to the optimum point. Even the whites are going to be better if you have the color available, and your planking curve and all that stuff. So I think they're just going to continue to do that. They probably don't have as much incentive to, you know, like make a larger um, spotlight mount for the 600 and for whatever is coming next. I hope they do, but uh, if the money doesn't crunch out, then they might not do that. Will they come out with a larger Nova type thing? I don't know. What I like is that they came out with the Nova. It wasn't trying to be a sky panel. It was right in between the 30 and the 60.
Right.
That's what I was always hoping that people would do, come out with something new. Something that is just a little
An in
different in the
between.
category,
Yeah.
because everybody's trying to come out with the sky panel killer. It's like, sorry, that ship has sailed. So thanks, but and now people are going to start coming out with those, sort of like the Vortex, which is the same form factor, but it's going to have lenses. So it'll be a hard light that you can make soft, but in a sort of larger form factor.
Hmm.
And in a lot of ways, that's wise. That's like, okay, we're going to start with hard light. You can always make it softer. In other ways, I don't know how innovative that really is. So, it's not a bad thing, but yeah, I don't know.
I'll say for me, like I'm really excited, like kind of what you were saying, just in terms of what they do for RGB lights, just because, I don't myself have a Nova, but I do have a sky panel, and I will say that ever since I got a sky panel, like that paired with a color meter, that's like especially for corporate stuff, like that's my bread and butter. That's such an incredible combo. And just being able to literally dial in your CCT and then your delta UV and seeing how far off lights are from. And that's another, kind of point too, that I always kind of come back to, is that when you're kind of measuring the color accuracy of a light, like even though that this light may be this far off from the Planckian locus, like sometimes natural daylight is that far off from the Planckian locus too. So that's another thing I really love about RGB, is being able to just dial that in, because as much as I love just straight 5600, 50, whatever, just daylight, being able to, the versatility, it's kind of what we were talking about, the 600D, just how adaptable it is in so many different situations. The versatility of RGB is just so profound. And I would love to just see more of that, similar to the, like the Orbiter or the Aries previous RGB. It was like a
L
LED.
series.
Yeah, the L. Yeah, exactly. So I'm super excited to see if Aperture can start popping out some of those, because I'd be a buyer for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, they'll definitely go RGB, because that's where things are going. So we'll see that. Something innovative, I don't know. Smarter minds have to figure that out, I guess. I mean, in a lot of ways, I've held off from going the light mat route, and with the spectrum and stuff like that, I always wanted more output from light mats, and or have them be foldable, because I didn't want to always take up that amount of space. But now that I'm not traveling that much, just because of we don't, then the whole collapsible thing isn't necessarily as important as it was. And so, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the next innovation is going to be. It's almost like, if we made everything RGB and had the same output and could put our HMIs to bed, that would be pretty cool.
That'll be the day.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, at the end of the day, they're all different tools for different jobs. And that's something that I always preach, that, I'll love using light mats for this. I'll love using sky panels for that. I'll love using a 600 for this. And I'll love using a Orion for that. So it's like, again, all different tools for different jobs. And, it's up to us to figure out which one is the right tool for each job. But thank you for coming on and spending your time over here on the stream. I really appreciate your time and all your insight. And, I'm sure everyone watching this and catching the VOD will appreciate it as well. Thank you so much.
Hey, right on. Yeah, I was just watching your variable ND video before this, and the gift you give is well worth the time as well. So thank you for including me in this talk.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, you can if you watch the replay, you can see the real time chat, and then I'm sure you'll see a bunch of the comments praising you and just hoping that you continue making your videos, because we certainly appreciate them. So. Again, we appreciate appreciate them and your time. So, really quick, where can people find you if they want more?
Meet the Gaffer on YouTube. I guess Insta, I'm just L Seerveld, but I don't do a whole lot on that, and I mostly just lurk on Twitter. So I think it's mostly YouTube, and I'm happy to field people. Direct email me all the time, and I'm happy to help when I can. So, and Patreon, Meet the Gaffer Patreon. So that's another way. And yeah, all the communities out there are really pleasant people for the most part. I don't find a whole lot of trolls in this world. So in our world. Which I really appreciate.
Well, that's awesome. There you go. If you have any questions, obviously feel free to leave them in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Thanks, man.